Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to another episode of r/MaliciousCompliance, the only place where people actually get what they ask for because they truly deserve it. My friends, I hope you're having a great day today. And if it happens to be your birthday today, happy freaking birthday. Guys, I am so excited. I literally drank so much coffee. Anyways, I hope you enjoy the stories in this one, and do remember to hit that subscribe button for future stories. We're gonna dive in, guys. So I live in an apartment building where everybody gets one assigned parking space per apartment, as standard. You can pay for an extra one, but we don't need that. So due to a history of bad parking in the car park, they introduced a rule whereby you can be fined if you do not park in your allotted parking spot. Now my parking space is at the end of a row. On one side, I have a wall about 1.5 meters away from the end of my parking space. On the other is a car belonging to the person who lives directly below me in the building. Now, my under-neighbors are a family with 3 young children. Knowing how difficult it can be to get all their kids into their car seats, as I have 2 of my own, I generally give them a bit more space and park a little bit outside of the line on the opposite side. And remember, next to me on the opposite side of my parking space is a wall. There's no reason for anybody to walk next to my car at that point. Now, this is something I've been doing for months, and I do understand the need to enforce the rule where cars interfere with other parking spots or walkways, but for me, parking a little bit outside of the spots affected nobody other than my neighbor who was given more space to get their kids into the car. So I walked down to my car recently to see a note from management office telling me that I have been fined. So I went to see them, and sure enough, it was for parking outside of the space. Now, I tried to explain to them that it was to help my neighbor and that nobody would be inconvenienced, but they told me that rules were rules and there's nothing to do about it. I got a fine for $60 and had 40 days to pay it. Now, being quite riled up, I went through the relevant contract and was dismayed to find that they were indeed correct. There was absolutely nothing I could do about it. Now, I did, however, note that there was a statement in the contract stating that every single payment received by the management company had to receive a written receipt signed for by the management company within 2 working days. There was also no rules about me having to make payment of my fine in a single deposit. So this is where the malicious compliance comes in. Now, by this point, there was 37 days remaining to pay the fine, so I divided 60 by 37 and set 37 recurring payments of $1.63 daily for the time remaining with my bank, which was very little effort. After a few days had passed, I went to the management office asking for my receipts. They told me that they would provide my receipts upon full payment, to which I responded that the contract was quite clear. They must provide a written receipt for each and every payment, not for each and every fine, and that they were already overdue my first receipt by a day. Now, they did try arguing with me, but I told them, sorry, rules are rules. And it was completely clear in the contract, so every couple of days, they had to fill out receipts and then walk them over to my letterbox. I have continued to give my neighbor some extra space by parking slightly over the opposite line, but as of yet, I have not received another fine. That's a win right there, guys. So the guy probably realized that OP's willing to play the dumb game that he was trying to play, and he gave up. But what a stupid money grab though. Like giving someone a $60 ticket for parking outside of the line just a little bit. They should bring that to my local Walmart, guys, but hey, rules are rules, right? So at the time, I had just moved from a small village in Europe. When I moved to Canada, I met up with others from my tiny area in Europe. Being from the same little country, we all became close. I had become friendly with the next door neighbor. She was a waitress at a high-level restaurant in town. She told me that I should stop by, and so I did. So I brought my friends along, and it became a regular thing, where 9 or 12 of us would come in and eat and be served by her. Now, we'd come in twice a week, every week, and I asked if that was okay, but she never seemed overwhelmed, and we often caught her just chilling at the front desk once she was done with the initial plates. More on that later. Again, we are not from a tipping country, so initially, I was gonna tip 15%. I was then informed by the host that an auto 18% tip was added to the bill for groups larger than 6. Okay, great. I didn't have to figure out how much to tip. So after almost 3 months or so of this, she stops by as I'm taking out my trash. One thing I know about her is that she does seem nice, but she also has no tact. And she can have a bossy demeanor. She tells us that she enjoys having us as customers and loves seeing us enjoy the food, but that we should be tipping minimum 20%. Heavy emphasis on the minimum. She then told me, also, good tippers would give at least 30%. Now, I am a bit stunned that of all the things that she'd talk about to me, that it was about not tipping enough. So I simply say, I'm sorry, okay, She then finishes off with her signature sweet smile, and she says, "Sorry, hun, if you can't afford to eat out, then you shouldn't be doing so." Now, honestly, if she was polite and said something like, "Oh, by the way, it's customary to tip X amount if servers do a good job in Canada," then I would have understood. But many times, I remembered that she was inattentive as a waitress, and we'd often have to flag her down after making eye contact, where she'd just wait behind the counter. Like I said, 20% was not out of the question. It was the way she said it. So I mentioned this encounter to my friends, and after a little talk, we realized that we can't afford that. And we definitely couldn't afford it if we want to be able to purchase other goods such as fine wines, cheeses we love, and the like. Now, you see, we aren't poor, but we're not rich either. These weekly dinners were little luxuries that we splurged on, for the sake of friends and feeling special in a fancy restaurant. It didn't break our bank, but it still was a significant amount of money. To tip her properly, we decided that it was too much. Now, I do want to mention that between our group of 9 to 12 friends, it was hundreds in dollars in tips alone per week. That's a lot for us. We could use that money to rent a pool hall, fishing tours, etc., etc. So we did what any responsible adult would do. We stopped buying what we couldn't afford. It was far cheaper to host our gatherings in someone's house and do a potluck. Now, discussing this with our other neighbors, I hear that she said the same thing to our neighbors. She would invite them out to eat and later tell them that the tip is too low. They've always said the same thing. She told them 20% minimum, and her service wasn't the best. It was very hurried and not very attentive, etc. And the entitlement. Anyways, we stopped eating at the restaurant and having her as the waitress. Mind you, I never stopped saying hi to her. I kept up my pleasantries, etc. But now, after we stopped coming in, she had a scowl on her face when she'd seen me. She kept her responses quick and she stopped saying hi as much. So after about a month that we stopped, one of our neighbors mentioned to me how she was complaining that her tips weren't great anymore, and that she couldn't afford to get more fillers for her cheeks at the new medical spa down the road. Oh well, like you said, don't eat out if you can't afford it. Guys, I don't even know what to say to this. The entitlement is so strong with this waitress. I mean, telling someone that they should be tipping 30% when your service is downright horrendous is crazy. I don't know though, maybe OP and their 12-person crew is doing her some good by not going there anymore. I mean, how much fillers does one really need in their cheeks? Seriously. Now, I do say it was an apartment, but it was really the basement of a house that the landlord had walled off to create 2 apartments to rent. Now, the place was kinda crappy, but the rent was cheap, and we were close to work. Everything was fine for a few months, but the only parking for us was on the street out front. The couple that rented the upstairs apartment had the rights to the garage and the driveway, as they paid more than we did. Suddenly, my car got a couple of BS tickets for parking on the street. I'm guessing some cop needed to meet their quota, and my girlfriend's car got sideswiped in a hit and run. This crap had to stop, so we decided to email the landlord, as that was her preferred method of communication, to ask if there's anywhere safe for us to park. She replies, "Park anywhere you want." Now, we had noticed that our upstairs neighbors usually avoided the driveway to park in the front yard, so we figured that that would be a good spot for us too, so we parked in the front yard for the rest of the year. We figured that would be the end of it. We finished our lease, left the place in better shape than we found it, and requested our $1,500 security deposit back. So after a couple of weeks, we got a check in the mail for $700. No explanation, nothing. We asked the landlord for one, and she replied that the deducted amount was to resod the lawn, claiming that our cars parked on it had damaged it. Now, I was the only one who cut the grass at this house while we stayed there, so I was well aware that the lawn had more weeds and bald spots than grass. Picture the African savanna in midsummer. No one had ever lifted a finger to landscape any part of the property, but the landlord wanted to sell the house once the leases were up, and she figured she could get the renters to pay for a nice new lawn. I complained to the landlord and she didn't care. I put in a complaint with the local housing department and they didn't care. I threatened to take her to court and she did not care. So that's what I did. I took her to small claims court. Now, I had never sued anyone before, so I was going in prepared. I took pictures of the entire front yard. The area that she claimed we damaged was actually one of the best pictures of grass, though it did have a small rut that my tires made when the yard was muddy in the summer. I got testimonials from our upstairs and across the street neighbors. Most importantly, I printed out that email where the landlord told us to park anywhere. We were suing for $1,800 to cover the court cost and both of us missing a day of work, on top of the full security deposit. In mediation, we said that we would settle for $1,400. But she must have thought that she was in the right, because she refused to offer a penny more than the original $700 check, which we never cashed. When we got in front of the judge, it was pretty clear that she had no evidence, she hadn't prepared anything, and just assumed that us kids would fall on our faces, and we did not. We put everything we had in front of the judge and made our claim, and he was impressed. He stopped us when we showed him the email. He then looked at the landlord and asked, "Did you really tell them to park wherever they wanted?" Now at this point, she knew she was screwed. She started to sputter, and out came a, "Yes." The judge then replied, "Then what are we even talking about?" And that was that. Judgment in full for us, and she had to pay to resod her own damn lawn. So next time you tell someone to park wherever you want, you'd better mean it, or at least don't try to screw someone over when they comply with what you said. If you made it this far, thanks for reading. Guys, what a sweet, sweet outcome. Honestly, if OP had talked to her through the phone, it might have ended differently. It might have been a lot of he said, she said, but oh joy. The landlord's preferred method of communication, email, really came back to bite her shady self because, yeah, that email really screwed her over. You guys know how much I love landlord stories because I've been screwed over in the past, as I mentioned, and it's so important to document everything. So this compliance is ongoing and will be for the foreseeable future. So I pulled out my gas-powered pressure washer this past weekend for the first time in 3 years. I figured it was well past time to do some property cleanup. I started at 11 on Saturday morning, as I didn't want to start too early out of respect for my neighbors. I worked until around 4 o'clock with a couple of breaks in between. I got the back and both sides of the house done and lots of concrete patio. I figured I can finish the front driveway and the retaining wall the next day. On Sunday, I fired it up once again at 11 o'clock and got to work for about an hour, and then went for lunch and came back for 1 o'clock. Maybe an hour or so later, I'm interrupted by a city officer who's responding to a noise complaint. Apparently, there was a bylaw that prohibits power equipment on Sundays. I'm thinking, I had no idea. The cop did give me a warning with no ticket, and the guy was actually very nice. Now, I was a bit annoyed that my neighbors called bylaw on me without at least coming to talk to me first, but okay. Now at this point, there was a huge mess all over the end of my driveway, the sidewalk, and the street. So I asked the officer if it's okay if I quickly take 5 minutes to clean up the mess and push it all together. He says, sure, no problem, and I quickly start cleaning up. So cue not one, but two of my old geezer neighbors come running out of their houses to attack the bylaw officer. A minute later, he comes back and says, sorry, but you need to shut down now. Okay, he's just doing his job now, but I'm pissed. I've lived here for 8 years, and none of these old geezers have ever said hello to me or my family. So I decide to get the details of the exact bylaw. I find out that you can operate power equipment Monday to Friday from 7 to 7, Saturday from 9 to 5, I should have started earlier, and nothing on Sunday. So as he's leaving, I call out very loudly to him, so just so I'm clear, 7 a.m. Monday morning is a-okay? The bylaw officer says, yep. So bright and early at the stroke of 7 a.m. Monday morning, I put an hour of pressure washing before work. Tuesday morning, another bright and early start. Wednesday session was truly awesome. Now, who should stop by this morning while I was working on my retaining wall and sidewalk but my neighbor, Baldy McBylaw Collar. I gave him a friendly wave and a neighborhood good morning and continued with my work until I ran out of gas. Now, the guy hung around for a while, glaring unhappily at me, but he must have realized that there was nothing he could do about this situation that he had caused. I love how I'm annoying him so much. Now, I am running out of things to pressure wash, but my other neighbor has let me know that I can borrow his grinder, so I can finally get rid of that piece of rebar sticking out of the concrete at the side of my house. It's Sunday today, and tomorrow is a holiday, so I guess it'll have to wait till Tuesday at 7 a.m. I'll be up bright and early. My friends, I love this so much. You guys don't even understand. Oh wow, your whole property is looking immaculate. Well, yeah, it's amazing what you can accomplish when you're feeling spiteful. Now, OP does have an update, and the update reads, Baldy McBylaw Collar came out this morning not very happy with me. I asked him several times to stay off my property, and he actually said, or what? Are you gonna hit me? Now, this fellow does seem a little mentally unstable if he's trying to goad me into a fist fight. So about 2 years ago, I was working as an assistant manager at a small business, about 20 to 25 employees overall. I had been there for about 5.5 years. 3 as an entry-level position, and then as the business grew, the manager was getting overwhelmed, so they created the assistant manager position and put me in it. Now, I was their jack of all trades, covering multiple positions in the business when needed, built and maintained a new website, served as the entire IT department, got a new phone system installed along with replacing another major critical piece of equipment, did inventory management, distributor relationships, and more. Well, owner number 1 was fed up with owner number 2's BS, and he said either sell me your half or buy my half. Well, owner number 2 ended up choosing to stay. A few staff left, including the manager, while the rest of us braced for the disaster that was coming, while we decided what to do. So on to the malicious compliance. As assistant manager, the staff had brought some concerns about quality and staff safety to me, so I brought them to the owner. The response I got was, I don't care about staff concerns, they're all replaceable anyway. I was told to tell the staff that they should no longer bring their concerns to me, but to the new manager. Well, I went home that night, shared the entire conversation with most of the staff, and typed up my 2 weeks notice and turned it in the next morning. So the fallout. So in addition to losing me and everything I normally did, another 3 or 4 people quit over the next month, leaving the owner overall with about half of his staff. That place, even at full staff, we were barely managing. The website has not been touched since I left. Still has the old owner and the outdated information up. I have gotten multiple questions about where something was or how to do something because no one else knows how to run certain things. A number of their clients I know have left because things have been getting worse in their products, and overall, I give it a couple of years before she has to sell or close because I can't imagine this is gonna go so well. My friends, the owner really shot himself in the foot with that line, guys. I absolutely hate it when people think that way. Everyone's replaceable. I mean, yeah, they are, but you need to recognize when you have good employees because let's face it, some people work harder than others, pay more attention to detail, think differently, react differently to stressful situations, etc., etc. Like guys, I work at a place that has such a high turnover rate because my boss thinks everyone is replaceable. Like you keep thinking that and all the good employees leave and you're left with a poorly run company. That's gonna shut down one day. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /malicious compliance. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the stories today, and if you did, hit that like button. And if you missed yesterday's episode on the channel, an entitled Karen purposely parks her camper on OP's private property and gets taught a super expensive lesson, to the point where she cries. Guys, check it out if you haven't, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I love you.